it's often perceived to be selfish by choosing you first. And I'm like, isn't that a social enigma? Because truly it is selfless, because by you choosing yourself first, you're selfless and restoring and giving the most to the people that you want to give to, as well as in work and in personal life, and also to your own spiritual and physical self. It took so long of my own life to recognize how important that self love is, because within that self love, I am full and I get to be the best version of myself with someone else that I never had, I never even thought was possible. And so ultimately, by doing that, you're adding not just to one person, but to the world just because of you.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about choosing you first. I'm delighted to welcome Michelle Bishop. Michelle is a master's certified life coach, podcast host, and author of the Amazon #1 best-selling book, Choose You First. You can reach Michelle at her website, bishoplife.com, and I'll include that link in the show notes. Welcome, Michelle. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Oh, I'm so glad too. I'm so excited.
I am too. I love talking about wonderful and exciting things, and sometimes they're not intuitive. So when we're talking about choosing you first, some people think, ooh, that's selfish. What are you talking about? We're supposed to be selfless and thinking about other people. And we are. And this is a crazy thing. And that by choosing you first, it helps other people. I enjoyed checking out your website, and there was a story there about you losing a significant amount of weight and addressing the deeper underlying causes that put you there. Is it okay if we start with your story?
Absolutely. There's a lot of story there, like there is for everyone, but we'll start off with the weight loss. And I love how you said, Linda, that it's often perceived to be selfish by choosing you first. And I'm like, isn't that a social enigma? Because truly it is selfless, because by you choosing yourself first, you're selfless and restoring and giving the most to the people that you want to give to, as well as in work and in personal life, and also to your own spiritual and physical self. And I did have a very tragic loss because I had endured a life of child abuse, domestic abuse, self harm in many areas. And ultimately, when I did put down the armor, I was able to give myself selflessly and authentically to the man that I love. And in that, I received love that I never actually thought I would receive. And then he tragically died in a drowning accident on a business trip. And I literally, it took my breath away. I just was like, where do I go from here? And I mean, I was a strong woman, very successful professionally, but truly my soul had been so invested in him that I really didn't put the energy and the needed support for myself to be even more than I know I can be. Uh, but it was enough, because God always makes sure that we are enough in whatever chapter we're in. And what I did find out is that in that, I had to rediscover who I was without this love, this part. And I was so broken. And for that, I spent years, I think the first couple of years in grief, isolating myself. And then I had I'd gotten in December 2020 COVID during the heat of the pandemic, and spent 3 weeks in the ICU. And I did say I did not want to be intubated. So it was a real struggle. But I had this epiphany that occurred while I was in the hospital. And during that, I actually had this moment where no one was there, as well as it was just me. And in that, I had this person laying on the couch that I didn't know. I wasn't afraid, and he was just throwing a ball against the wall, back and forth, back and forth. And I would hear repeating, "It's just time." And that ball never, it was like a clock, never waffled. Like it didn't shake. It just went right to his hand, right out of his hand. And I kept on hearing, "It's just time. It's just time." And then upon getting out of the hospital, I recognized, what legacy have I left of just surviving in my life? What am I leaving to my children for others? And I was like, I have a story to tell and I want to help others. It's a calling. And in that, the licensing in the United States is not required to have any state certification, but I thought that would be so ignorant because it's such a vulnerable part is to trust someone to coach you through that I pursued my international accreditation federation through this only basically I would say governance of the coaching. And as I acquired that, I continued for my own self journey and I began what was true healing from grief, from pain, from despair and hopelessness. And it started to, I shed the armor that I had been holding on for so many years. And that's why I say it starts from within, you know. And so in that weight of losing, it wasn't just the physical weight, it really started from the mental weight. And that has enabled me to truly have a lifestyle of joy and happiness. And I can fly and I'm healthy and I'm not on medication anymore to help with my high blood pressure. I'm in the best physical health I could ever be mentally. And then I get to be in this community hand in hand with others that are traveling the same path. And I can help lead if they choose. But more importantly, we're here to support.
Wow. There are so many facets as we're talking about this story. It could go in so many different directions. We started with a question of losing weight. And I love that you said, I had physical weight, but the real weight was that mental weight. And you mentioned the word armor several times. And it's interesting that there have been studies that show that, I mean, first of all, our skin is our protection. And when we need to protect ourselves, sometimes we do gain weight. It creates a shield, a barrier to help protect when we feel vulnerable. And as we are able to heal from our mental and emotional burdens, it helps us to be able to heal physically. Everything works hand in hand. And yet, that aspect of your story was almost insignificant. There was so much more going on. One of my favorite lines you said was that we are enough in every chapter of our story. And there were so many different chapters of your story dealing with childhood abuse, which obviously continued until later. And then those things affect us very, very deeply. It is normal for us as humans to try to figure out our value and our worth. And we take our cues from the way that other people treat us. Does someone else respect me? Do they love me? Do they think I'm worthy? And if they do, then I think, oh, yeah, maybe I am. But if they treat us poorly, if they do not respect us, if they are not kind, then oftentimes our conclusion is, well, that must mean that I am not worthy of being treated kindly. I am not worthy of being loved. And when we talk about putting ourselves first, I think a lot of this is trusting that the person who gets to choose whether or not we have value, we have worth, we are worthy and deserving of love is us, not from the outside, not that someone else determines whether or not I'm worthy. I'm the one. And that makes all the difference. And as you shared your story, you had at one point in your life one person who was very special and who loved you and treated you in a way that you were able to be open and you were able to connect in a way that you previously hadn't thought was possible. And I'm so grateful you had that experience. And I'm so sorry for your loss. But even through this experience, one amazing, wonderful person who sees you and loves you is not enough to carry yourself when that person isn't there. It has to be us. So thank you for sharing your story. I apologize. We're not going to be able to get into every aspect because there were so many beautiful things. Another thing that I loved is when you were trying to find your purpose, it really seemed like there was a change when you changed your focus from, I want to help others. And in order to do that, wow, I got to be the best version of me. And once again, when we're putting ourselves first, it doesn't mean, well, I don't care about anybody else. Quite the contrary. It's, I care about other people and I can serve others better when I love me and when I am the best version of me. Isn't that the way that you have, the conclusion you've come to as well?
I was going to say, Linda, you so get me. Really, I mean, that is just a great summation. And isn't it interesting that it took so long of my own life to recognize how important that self love is. Because within that self love, I am full and I get to be the best version of myself with someone else that I never had, I never even thought was possible. And so ultimately, by doing that, you are truly you're adding not just to one person, but to the world just because of you. And I love the fact, and I've said this to many of friends, many colleagues, many of my clients. It's like, in being enough, it is simple, it is freeing, it is flight, and it's just breath. And that is so important to do all the time is just stay still in a moment and recognize the importance of you in this breath. And no matter what chaos may be around you, because you're centered. And so I'm not looking for acceptance. I'm looking to simply give. And that is just fabulous.
I love that. Freedom. Freedom. When you get it right, everything changes. Instead of coming from that outside in, you determine whether or not, let's see, Michelle, do you like me? And if you like me, then maybe that means that I am worthy of someone liking me. Instead, it's, wow, I feel comfortable in my own skin. And then I'm free to truly listen and to love you and everyone else because I'm not worried about me. I feel secure that I am enough.
And as I've made this circle of life, I'm the closest to the essence in which I was born onto this earth, just being me.
Isn't that awesome? I love that.
It's
It's a
fabulous.
circle. We were born enough. We were
Yes.
born enough. And then we forget because we listen to the voices. And
Mhm.
often they start from the outside. They might be family or friends or teachers or someone says something and it hurts. And then usually we add our own voice to it and we repeat the voices that we have heard and then we add some more and we forget what we started with from birth. Now, you talked about armor. Is it okay if we talk a little bit about more armor and you talk about being a silent warrior? So, do we need armor to be a warrior or do we need to take off our armor to be a warrior?
Oh, Truly, the essence of a confident warrior is without armor, because once again, you are enough just as you are. And so that is that vulnerability where people say, "Oh, you're being vulnerable," or that's a weakness. Or if you're showing emotions of authenticity, that could be interpreted as a weakness. No, no, no. You are the warrior just as you are. It's how you utilize that with kindness, love, resilience, determination, dedication. We talk about the difference between selfless and selfish. Just because you're within and giving does not mean that you are selfish. You are truly selfless because you need that strength to quiet the voices. You need to do that because the voices will never go away. The reality is, these voices will, I mean, every day there's moments that I always try, no matter what I'm doing, is to gain just knowledge, understanding, not trying to persuade one person to another, but really learning from them because we are all unique in our individualism. And so that's why I think it's very, very important that if you have this armor that you build up from birth, from childhood, outward in, I mean, the first thing, think about when you're born, you're listening to your parents, and it's like, oh no, don't touch that plug. It's for your safety, but it's these things that you start hearing from other people of acceptance. And when you do the right thing, you get praise. So, as opposed to, because, and again, as a child, you don't get a choice. So it's how you decipher those things and how you're interpreting them as you get older. And a lot of times we got to do some unwinding of the threads of what we believe, which is not what the reality is, to quiet the voices within and accept the voices are there. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but is that really what I need in moving successfully in forward motion, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually? You then get that choice. That is the power. There's not 1 ounce of armor that is involved in that, but the real work is being able to take those years and moments and lives and every second, all the stuff that we receive from the outside, and removing it, and then keeping the openness open so that you don't put that armor in, because it's a learned behavior. We learn this to protect ourselves. It's fight or flight. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. What am I gaining from this lesson? So it's really, you've got to be strong. And once you do remove, and you have to, it's a lifestyle, it's a conviction. And so these are things that really show complete strength in yourself as a warrior of life.
Isn't that awesome? You're talking about a warrior, and I kind of have a picture in my mind. Sometimes you see an image where there's a person and they're covered in armor. Or we might think of even like a crab. They have their exoskeleton. There is a armor plated on the outside, and on the inside is something soft and something vulnerable. And that's kind of the way I think a lot of times we see ourselves. We are vulnerable, so we need to protect ourselves with this exoskeleton. We're gonna build it, we're gonna create it. And the reality is something different than what we imagine. We are actually strong. And I loved how you said that the way that we show our strength is in kindness and in love and in vulnerability, which, man, talk about a paradox in there.
Yeah.
And then when we can let go of the armor and we are stronger than we were when we felt weak and needed to be protected. And it's quite lovely. There are some things you mentioned. One is about interpreting. And I think that matters so much. Let's talk about it a little bit more. I think The stories that we tell ourselves come from the voices that we hear, often in our childhood, but our experiences in and of itself is not what causes our stories. We still choose our stories. So, for example, if I am abused, that is horrible. That is a thing that really happened. But it's the story, the explanation of, wow, I must have deserved that. I must be bad. I am worthless. I deserve to have people treat me unkindly. We create a story, and then unfortunately, we recreate that experience. And then other people don't treat us well. Um, and when you talk about unwinding and trying to find out where did that come from? And it also takes some accountability because someone hurt me. They did that. That was their choice, not mine. The part that's my choice is the story and the explanation that I created. That's the part I have to unwind, don't you think?
Uh, Linda, as you were saying, it's not negating the fact that those things have occurred. It's the interpretation that you're telling yourself in those things. So, in my uh, recognizing that it was something that occurred, I chose to recognize it, but look at it as simply an action of neutrality. And so my mother back in the 60s, mental illness was never really discussed. And so recognizing that in today's time, it would be very clear that she was bipolar with schizophrenia and psychosis episodes. So I'm not dismissing the chaos. I'm not dismissing how it affected my life. I'm not dismissing how it affected others' lives, but that's not me. And so to give that power to let it dictate reactionary actions, because I've taken that story in my mind to say all these negative things in reinforcement of that action, I'm not empowering myself to rewrite that and say, look, this is not who I am. And one of the things that I can say that brings me extreme joy is that I broke the pattern and the chain of violence that occurred before my mother was my abuser, before her father was her abuser. And I have no idea how long that went on in our lineage. But my children, I have two wonderful young women, 24 and 26, and they've never had any hands of any type of abuse. They have been loved, and they are strong, confident women, and they still have their um, moments, as we all do, in stumbling through life, but they have a support mechanism. So within, they're thinking of those things not as a victim, but as a thriver, not just a survivor. You've got to move through the steps. I had to undo. I mean, I literally felt so much of my life I was simply surviving. And I look at surviving as just keeping your head above water to prevent yourself from just sinking to the bottom and just not being able to breathe, anxiety, a lot of negative things in your life. My children, whatever they experience, is not because of anything but what life will present itself automatically in everyone's life. It's not butterflies and fairies everywhere. I mean, we've got things, true things that occur to us. Some are by our own actions, some are by others imposing it, but it's all how you receive that data and how story and what you choose to do with that, because you are empowered to do that. And you've got the right mindset, you have the tools. And so I love to see young women going and just killing it, and I don't mean it, negatively, because they are living their own truth. And I may not always agree with that because I'm their mama. And I said, I was put on this earth to love you and to protect you. And of course, they are their own women, so they get to make the choice, but I put them on solid footing comparatively to having to backtrack that I had to do within myself to kind of get on that solid footing. So I'm I'm a very spiritual person. So I really always say that I stand before you by the grace of God, and my children are the young, incredible women they are, not only because of me as their mother, but because of all that God has allowed in their lives, and they're thriving, and they will have an incredible life ahead of them.
And isn't that beautiful?
It is. I want that for everyone, though. It's
Absolutely.
everyone's. Everyone.
And that's why you do what you do. So I'm going to pull this back to our beginning and our
Mhm.
topic of putting you first.
Mhm.
So we have a phrase. So what does that look like? What does it feel like? So keeping that in mind, putting you first. Let's go to your story. You are part of generational trauma. And if we continue to survive, we also typically become the next link in the chain and continue that for the next generation. When you switch, put me first, and make a choice, and I think that's really what putting me first is it's a choice. I'm going to look at things. I'm going to be brave enough even to feel things that hurt, to look at things that are not comfortable to look at. And I am going to turn and go a different direction. And now, because of your choice of putting yourself as someone who has a choice, who matters, who can make a difference, then you have created a new pattern for your children so they don't have to just survive, they are free to thrive. And it feels different. It doesn't mean that everything is now easy, but it means that I have the freedom, the power, the choice to act rather than just react when hard things happen. So putting yourself first helps not only you, but the generations that follow. It looks like peace. It looks like freedom. It looks like healing. It feels like love. It feels like empowerment. These things are beautiful and good. And I'm proud of you. And I'm proud of every person with the courage to break a chain because we need you. Because there are so many chains that just continue and just chew up the next generation. And until we have the courage to stop and say, no, I choose something different, then it will just chew up everybody else. So thank you. And thank you for reaching forward and saying, you know what? It's not just me. It's not just my family. It's anyone who is willing to join this group of powerful people who choose something different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's it's not something that isn't unreachable. That's what I really think is important to everyone to recognize. This is not, and it's not a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 step. Everything's going to be perfect. I live in the journey step by step every day because I choose me first. So if you choose you first and make that commitment, it becomes so automatic. Don't make dramatic changes. Make small pivots of just moving towards that goal, and actually be proud of yourself. Have that within to say, I did that. You don't have to share that with anyone. Make those small, because everyone can choose to do that. And that's a beautiful thing. You can write your own story every single day. And when you make a step forward and it's not necessarily the right step, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? You say, okay, that didn't work out. I'm going to go with another step, because we get to do that. And it just makes life full of self-worth, accomplishment, happiness, joy, and you will attract like-minded people in your universe, in what we call oikos. And that's not a yogurt. Basically it's a community. It's a Greek word for community. And you get to touch the lives of everyone. Just if it's just at the gas station or at the grocery store.
I love that. And we mentioned earlier that usually, initially, and sometimes for our whole life, depending, we assume our value is based on what other people think of us. And we kind of take their outside and we bring it in. Now we're moving forward and saying, okay, I choose me first. I get to choose who I am, and I get to choose how I feel about me. And then, I mean, almost ironically, the thing that we wanted before, which is people to treat us well, to love us, to respect us, to value us, they come. We don't need them in order to feel worth, but gosh, I still want them. I love to be treated with kindness and respect. It's wonderful. And it happens naturally when we treat ourselves that way first.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Oh, Michelle, this has been delightful. Is there anything else you want to make sure we cover before we close today?
Well, I just really want to first thank you for your insightfulness, Linda, and our conversation, because it truly was important to share with others that this is attainable for oneself. Don't let the voices hold you back. Make small movements of change towards where you want for yourself, what you choose for yourself, and know that you are loved, you are enough, and kindness will lead that. And you've got all the support from all that you will need always. You just got to reach out for it.
I love that. I love that you reiterated this is attainable. I think part of our message is hope. First, it's that you're not alone. If you've ever felt not enough, you're not alone. And it is attainable hope that you can change and become and have what you want. So thank you so much for visiting with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Emily Marushin. She said, "If you want to have enough to give to others, you will need to take care of yourself first. A tree that refuses water and sunlight for itself can't bear fruit for others." Today, I invite our listeners to choose yourself and become empowered to overcome life challenges. See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for tuning in to Linda's Corner podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends to help us inspire even more listeners. Be sure to visit hopeforhealingfoundation.org for free and affordable resources to help you overcome life's challenges. And explore healingbreathworkdetox.com, where you'll find transformative tools for deep inner healing and lasting change. Also, don't forget to check out my books, Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. Your journey to hope, healing, and happiness starts here.